Hi, Pastor Vince with Clergy in Support of the Second Amendment. Before I begin today, I want to do what every other YouTuber does. I want to ask you to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel out a lot. Trying to launch this on YouTube after about a decade over on Facebook, and just trying to get more and more people to know we're here. And you can really help with that by simply liking the video, subscribing, and even better, leaving a comment. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. Well, today, I want to talk about the subject of Christ's command to turn the other cheek. And does that mean that we cannot defend ourselves against a lethal attack? Well, I think you already know from the fact that this is Clergy in Support of the Second Amendment that I absolutely believe that's not what it's saying. But what I believe is not authoritative. God's word is authoritative. So let's look at this passage in context. I'm going to look at the verses that almost every translation will lump together into one paragraph. And we're going to see what Christ really said here and what he really meant. By looking at each verse, we'll step through them one at a time. The first verse is Matthew 5:38. Where Christ says, "You have heard it said that it was an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth." Now that's clearly an incomplete statement. And one of the things we need to remember is that these verses were not in the original. Christ did not say this is verse 38 and this is verse 39. He was just speaking. And hundreds of years later, translators, in order to get it right and in order for people like me to be able to reference things, they put in verse divisions. But they're not authoritative. So let's look at the next verse, verse 39. "But I tell you, do not resist an evil person." That's the first half. Now, it is perfectly legitimate to read the passage this way. "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person." End of thought. Why is that legitimate? Well, because when you look at it, Jesus is talking about not taking revenge. The Old Testament provided for revenge. You could take revenge only up to whatever was done to you. You couldn't exceed the damages done to you. But Jesus is going to say, don't take revenge at all. And if you look at the word resist in the Greek, and I invite you to do that, you'll find it is a Greek military term. And it means to rise up against in battle, to take the offense. It is not a reference to self-defense in any way, shape, or form. What Jesus is saying is, don't rise up against somebody who hurts you in revenge. It's not your job. And of course, if we look at the whole counsel of God and look at Romans, where Paul tells us, "Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, I will repay." We're not to take revenge. But is self-defense revenge? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Let's keep reading. Beginning in the middle of verse 39, where we left off, "If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also." Now, what is he talking about here? First of all, let's ask the question, is this a reference to a lethal attack? No. I don't think anybody's ever died from being slapped on the cheek. What is he talking about? Slapping somebody on the cheek is a provocation. It's like when somebody walks up to you and insults your mother or your wife or your girlfriend, trying to get you to fight. Trying to get you to fight. And Jesus says, tolerate these things. Do not take the invitation, rise up and fight with another person over nothing, over an insult. Let them insult you again. Turn the other cheek and say, go ahead, you can slap me all you want, I'm not going to fight you. But he's not talking about self-defense. He's talking about not getting into useless, needless fights. So let's continue. It says, and if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. Again, if your enemy takes you to court back then and wants your shirt, give them your coat. Give them more than they've asked for. Love your enemies. Can you love your enemy and still defend yourself against their attack? Absolutely. Absolutely. This is about loving your enemies. Going even further, Jesus says in verse 41, if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Now, the New Living Translation actually translates this, if a soldier forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. The reason is simple. Soldiers were the only ones who had the right to do this to people. Roman soldier could force anyone, anytime, anywhere to carry their equipment 1 mile. Couldn't force them to carry it 2 miles. Couldn't force them to carry it 3 miles, just 1 mile. I've heard and read in various commentaries that Jews of the day who lived out in the country, if they were near a road where the Romans might be coming and going, they would put a stake right in front of their house, and then they would put another stake a mile down the road in one direction, another stake a mile down the road in the other direction. That way, they knew when they'd gone 1 mile, if they got grabbed at their house and made to carry the Roman equipment. And they went to that mile, they'd throw the equipment down, or they'd give it to the soldier and say, I've fulfilled my legal duty to you, I'm out of here. You're a hated Roman soldier, and the last thing in the world I want to do is help you. Well, Jesus says, carry that pack 2 miles. Go beyond. You love your enemy. That's what this is about. It doesn't say if the Roman soldier attacks you and tries to kill you for no reason, just stand there and let him kill you. Nothing like that. And it says, give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. Again, be generous. Be generous. Be loving. Show the love of God. That's what this is about. It's not about defending yourself against a lethal attack. Now, am I the only one who believes this? Of course not. Of course not. I want to read you something, and I want you to see if you can guess where it came from. Though defensive violence will always be a sad necessity in the eyes of men of principle, it would be still more unfortunate if wrongdoers should dominate just men. Who said that? Who said that? Well, you might think it was Thomas Jefferson or John Adams or one of the other founding fathers. It wasn't. Somebody who lived 1,000 years, well over 1,000 years before they did. A man named St. Augustine. Yep. St. Augustine, the greatest theologian in the history of the Christian church, revered by Catholics, Orthodox, Protestant, evangelicals, you name it. Everybody reveres St. Augustine. He did not think that self-defense was a sin. You shouldn't either. Well, that's all I have for you today. And again, I'd love it if you'd like, comment, subscribe. Encourage me to do some more of these videos. I've got some more ideas, some things that need to be resolved. So I will see you in the next video.